Well, it's the day after the night before, and what a night it was. Australia has a new Prime Minister and a new government. Anthony Albanese, or Albo as he's otherwise known, will now replace ScoMo. And actually, I've been waiting for this moment for almost 20 years. If you've watched my videos at Effective Blood Australia, you'll know that I've been campaigning for justice for victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal for 30 years. But for 20 years, I've been waiting for this moment. And the moment that the Australian Labor Party was returned to power. Now, the Liberal Party and the Labor Party have been no friend to victims of this scandal. Both parties have refused to do a thing, and both parties have refused to investigate how tens of thousands of Australians ended up with things like HIV and deadly viruses like hepatitis C. But 20 years ago, I managed to force a Senate inquiry. Well, you could hardly call it an inquiry. It had a couple of bureaucrats and, a few politicians from Labor, Liberal, Independents and things like that. And the reason that I forced that inquiry, actually, I had a friend in the Labor Party. He was actually the former president of the Labor Party, and he was a senator for for New South Wales. And his name was Steve Hutchins. He was a good bloke, and myself and my friend, the Reverend Bill Cruz, who's a national living treasure here in Australia, a good person to have backing a campaign like this. We made friends with Steve Hutchins, and he helped us force this Senate inquiry, and that was in 2004. And the reason we did that was because the year prior, in 2003, the British had just made financial assistance available to all victims of contaminated blood in their country. And the reason they'd done that was because the British government, they didn't care about victims. I mean, politicians and bureaucrats, I think you've probably found out in recent years, don't really care about their public. They care more about budgets and about their own careers. So the reason that the British made financial assistance available to British victims of their infected blood scandal was because they'd had advice that they'd most likely be jailed through a denial of care. And so British victims were given financial assistance, and right now in the UK there's Britain's largest inquiry, which is looking at the whole scandal of how, I think it's an estimated 30,000 British people, I think that's an underestimate, were infected with contaminated blood. I mean, in Australia we think it could be as much as 80,000 people since the blood supply began that were infected with the deadly virus hepatitis C. Hepatitis C is a leading cause of liver cancer today in the world. And it's actually a leading cause of people needing liver transplants. And so there's all these people that are infected and affected. The British gave financial assistance. They're now going to, the British government has indicated they accept liability. They're now going to compensate everyone infected and affected over in the UK. But now we get to an interesting part here in Australia. Now, it's more serious here in Australia than it is in the UK. And the reason for that is this. So I forced this Senate committee, this inquiry, into hepatitis C and the blood supply in 2004. And as Bill Cruz and I were very excited because it had an original chair with Steve Hutchins, this former president and senator for New South Wales. And he had said that he wanted to match the British. He commended the British Labor government of 2003 for making financial assistance available. And he rose in Parliament and he said, we want to match them. We want this inquiry, this Senate committee, to be a way to demonstrate to Australians that victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal deserve assistance, okay? And he gave an interview in the media, and that was in the Sydney Morning Herald, and immediately following that, guess what happened? The Australian Labor Party ousted Steve Hutchins as chair of that Senate committee into hepatitis C and the blood supply in 2004. Now, Anthony Albanese is the leader of the far left, it's my understanding, the Labor Party, and it's my understanding from victims at that time that they were in communication with various people. They believed that the far left and Albo's section or group among the Labor Party were responsible for basically scuttling our inquiry. And one of Albo's mates, Senator Jan McLucas, she's retired now, but she was a senator for Queensland and again a far leftist. She came in, and immediately she came in, any talk of financial assistance was immediately crushed because the Labor Party brought in their view that if you were to financially assist haemophiliacs, even though they were knowingly infected, and that evidence is known all around the world that people with this bleeding disorder were knowingly given contaminated blood treatments. Okay, and what the Labor Party said was, well, if we help those people that were knowingly infected, that it's an outrage. If we help them, then it will send the wrong message to people who, use crack use heroin and ice and speed and share needles and all that kind of thing. So with that, Australia was the only country in the first world to say to its victims of its worst scandal, because Anthony Albanese and his far left scuttled that Senate inquiry in 2004. And so I was outraged, and there was nothing I could do. The Labor left got their way and the inquiry was destroyed. And unfortunately, many people in our group died. And I had friends who died, and they didn't get the care that they needed. And their deaths were hastened, and it was extremely distressing. And I say, if you know the story of the Count of Monte Cristo, well, I won't go into that story. Perhaps I will in future about why it is I mention it. I'm no count, but I've held on, and I've held on for this moment. I intend to confront the Australian Labor government and Australia's new Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, for their role in the criminal cover-up and the criminal denial of care to victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal. I'm very, very serious. I'm going to do this. The Australians were victims of this global scandal, and we've been denied care, and we've been treated like, the dregs of the earth. Our location may be the bottom of the planet, but we don't expect the people that we pay our taxes to, this far left groups in the Labor Party and this Anthony Albanese, to engage in criminal cover-ups, okay? And when they do, they'll be confronted by me and this group, Infected Blood Australia. Anthony Albanese must call a royal commission into Australia's deadliest medical scandal, Infected Blood. And you can help us support that call for the inquiry by clicking on the link in a bio or going to a link associated with this video if you watch on another platform. And things may look a bit gloomy here in Sydney, but we're not here to attack any political group. No, me personally, I don't understand it all, left, right. I just want to get help for victims of this scandal, okay? For those infected and affected. And when you see the evidence, if you go to infectedbloodaustralia.com, you can have a look at the evidence. You'll find out it was no accident. It was criminal negligence. And because of corruption, because it was the Australian Labor government that privatised Australia's largest business, CSL, in 1994, even though the Labor Australian government knew that CSL hadn't warned recipients of contaminated blood treatments that they'd been infected or exposed to hepatitis C. And the Labor government helped them conceal that. And that's criminal, and so we're going to pursue them criminally for that. And so they indemnified them. Well, you can't indemnify fraud. What are you thinking, Albanese? What are you thinking, Labor Party? You thought you could indemnify the murder of 1,400 Australians with haemophilia, including children that were knowingly injected with HIV and Hep C contaminated blood? What were you thinking? No. You're going to have an inquiry. Yeah. No, you are. You are. And if you don't, guess what's going to happen? We're going to put a couple of you in jail, okay? Yeah, and thank you to anyone watching this from around the world or in Australia. This is very genuine, and I thank you for your time, and I thank you for listening.